Yes, the conquistadors then.
Yeah. Well, the conquistadors.
Yes.
It's a collective name for basically the Spanish who colonised the Americas, the entire what we now call America, which is all of North America and South America,
Yeah.
especially the central area,
Yeah.
which is like from Mexico, southern United States, into the North of South America.
Okay.
And when they did that, they instituted the Christian religion in the form of the Vatican, the Catholic Church, and they committed the greatest genocide in history.
Yeah.
Up to 80 million of the indigenous peoples of the Americas that's up to over 90% of the people who were living in the Americas at the time.
Good God.
They're collectively known as the Indians, but they cover a vast array of cultures.
Yes.
Not just the Plains Indians in Ohio and the
everywhere.
Dakotas. There was the Eskimos in the north. There was the Amazon rainforest Indians. All these people, 90% of them were killed within the first century or two of the conquest.
Yeah.
These were the most brutal individuals imaginable, and they were there. They were on a mission, and they were on a mission to destroy. And we're talking about a very developed culture here, civilized culture. The Aztec city, Tenochtitlan, which is where Mexico City is today, where they had that ridiculous slide, those ridiculous slide things. No, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to talk about the slides. That was levelled, and the entire culture was exterminated.
Yeah.
And the shamans, the spiritual keepers of the ancient knowledge were killed, and their knowledge was buried. And this is what I mean. This is why I say that the knowledge those people have is
phenomenal.
It's dangerous. It's antithetical to the New World Order.
Yeah. Totally.
Wherever it appears, wherever it has appeared in the world, the first thing the Illuminati have gone, so when they started their empire at the end of the 4th millennium BC in what's now Iraq.
Yeah.
They moved it into Egypt, and they went into it became the Roman Empire and the Alexandrian Empire and things like that. Wherever they have gone, they've done the same thing.
Yeah.
They've exterminated the indigenous cultures and replaced it with their own. Now, what happened with the conquistadors 500 years ago was a terrible thing. But if you go back 1500 years earlier, the very same thing was being done in this country by the Romans. Around about 2,000 years ago, the Romans conquered Britain. And they fought a long, bitter battle to conquer Britain too.
What about Ireland?
And well, they never got to Ireland originally. They didn't get to Ireland until they managed to get the church in there in around about the 5th century. The Roman Empire didn't get into Ireland.
Okay.
But they, of course, after the Roman Empire fell, they sent the church in there to do it for them. This is what I mean by the same thing happening all the time, wherever you go. They use different tactics, but they do the same thing. I mean, I've done a lot of videos, as you know, Kathy. I've done videos about Roman Britain and how I consider it. It's hit me emotionally rather like St. Helena, because it's something that so obviously represents this borderline between the pre-Illuminati world and the Illuminati-occupied world.
Yeah.
And in some cases, it is literally a border. I've located what for a time was the border of the Roman Empire. It runs through Nottinghamshire near Bingham, where my girlfriend lives.
Yeah. And
I filmed on that border. It's marked by a Roman road called Foss Way. It's the A36 now, but the original Roman road is still there, still visible. And this literally represents the first emergence of this global culture, and about how the Illuminati pushed their global culture through various means over the decades. What's being done to St. Helena now is the same as was done by the conquistadors. Okay, they're not lopping people's heads off, they're not burning people and crucifying people.
Yeah.
But they are
doing it
forcing
another way.
them. Yeah, they're forcing them to have the global culture. And it comes through various ways. It comes through the same TV shows, the same films. The banal, and it seems like the worse a TV show is, the more intellectually shallow it is, the more popular it is, the more it's promoted, the higher budget it has. It's intended to stop you from thinking, not to help you think. It's intended to stop you from thinking, to shut down your mental processes, to shut down your intellect, to shut down your spiritual instincts. And it's also done through the commercial world, through the economy. And this is why, wherever you go in the world now, I've just done an article about this on HPANWO Voice.
Yeah.
You see the same shop names above the door. See, I had an experience a few years ago that completely opened my eyes to this.
Yeah.
I went to Australia, and I travelled a little bit before then. I went to Holland to see my family. I've been to Ireland. I've been to Wales and Scotland and France. But this time I was going to Australia. It was much further afield.
Yeah.
I was going to today because my brother lived there. I was going to stay with him. And so I got on the plane at Heathrow Airport in London thinking, I'm going somewhere really exotic and new and exciting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course in the departure lounge you have shops, don't you? You have W.H. Smith, like the news agents.
Yes.
I flew all the way to Australia, stopped in Singapore for a few hours, went to Australia, got off the plane thinking, wow, I've arrived. And what do I see? I see a branch of W.H. Smith in the arrivals hall.
Oh, God.
And it gets worse, it gets worse. I went through Sydney and Canberra and Alice Springs, the big cities I visited. And the same shop names are above the doors you find anywhere else. And city centres now are pretty much in uniform across the world. And of course I just said that, haven't I, talking about the Illuminati symbolism.
Yeah.
But in the architecture, but it's also in terms of the commercial aspects of those city centres is also uniform and mondial. And so you see, for instance, the subway, the subway, I never ever eat there because it's just, they're everywhere. And there's one in, wherever you live in the world, there's going to be a subway. I know, because they've got a subway in a place called Nome. It's a town called Nome, N-O-M-E.
Yeah.
And if you get your atlases out and look up Nome, you'll find out that it's actually one of the remotest and most inaccessible places on Earth.
Okay, but no McDonald's.
It doesn't have McDonald's, but it has a subway. And this is right on it's right in Alaska, at the Bering Straits. This is just at the point where North America meets Asia, and there's no roads that even go there.
Oh.
It's literally a day's journey from anywhere. But they got a bloody subway. And in Mumbai, India, they've got KFC. They've got a huge KFC in Mumbai, India. They've got a McDonald's. They've got McDonald's everywhere. In Seoul, South Korea, if you want to go out for a meal in South Korea, this is on the other side of the planet.
Yeah.
You get the option of going to McDonald's. And I went to a Pizza Hut in Sydney, and I think to myself, I haven't really travelled. When I was all my time in Australia, I didn't feel like I'd really travelled very far.
Okay.
And it made my experience there very lukewarm.
Oh.
It was not what I expected, and it opened my eyes to the world we're living in now.
Yeah.
And there's very, very few places left that have escaped this. St Helena is one of them. Some people are rebelling against it, which is good. Some people are rebelling against it.
Yeah.
And even in the modern world, there's a backlash. And for instance, Iceland is very well known now within the truth movement because the Prime Minister, Joanna Sigurðardóttir, is one of the few statesmen in the world I actually respect.
Yeah.
She's actually refused a loan from the International Monetary Fund.
Brilliant.
Which has devastated. And she refused the loan when it was offered to her. And her country is now, its economy is booming. It's a small country. There's only a few 100,000 people live there.
Yeah.
It's an isolated country, but its economy is booming.
Yeah.
And another country which is going through the same thing is Russia. Now I think the powers that be turned a blind eye to Iceland because it's a small country with very little influence.
Yeah.
But Russia is one of the superpowers in this. It's one of the poles of this multipolar world.
Yeah.
And Vladimir Putin of Russia is he's one of the few statesmen I feel any respect for.
Yeah.
He's refused an IMF loan too. Now, they put an awful lot of pressure on him, but he had more sense. These IMF loans have devastated countries like Greece, like Ireland.
Has Greece turned it down though now?
Well, they've got these people called Syriza that have come in.
Yeah.
But they're not delivering on their promises. They have unfortunately backed down a little bit. I mean, it's possible they were just a controlled opposition. But Greece, and there's obviously a lot of sentiment in Greece that are trying to fight back against this, which is good. But these loans should never, no government.
Doesn't Germany owe Greece?
Yeah, unfortunately what Syriza have done is they borrowed a load of money from Germany.
No, before that. Before the downfall, there was, it was a fact that Germany had a loan from Greece and remained.
Oh right, I didn't know that. But I know that Greece owed Germany some money, but they owe them.
I don't think Greece owes Germany anything. Germany owes them.
I hadn't heard of that.
Yeah.
But anyway, either way, I mean, the governments of these countries who agreed to these IMF loans,
Yeah.
no government would agree to it unless no head of state would agree to taking out these IMF loans, which are the acts of economical vandalism. They're acts of insanity or treason.
Yes.
And so
well, treason. It's definitely treason.
It has to be treason. These people, the people we have in power in this country and in these other countries like Ireland and Greece and all these other countries, are traitors to their own people because they are obviously agents of this global power structure.
Yeah,
to have economically crippled their own nations, to have shot themselves in the foot. I mean, well, not them personally. They still have their £300,000 houses and their yachts and things like that. No, it's the ordinary people. It's the old folk and the disabled and the kids who suffer, the unemployed.
Yeah,
that's always the most vulnerable people in society. They're the ones who have to go on food stamps.
Yeah,
they're the ones who have to go to the job centre.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is Russia is a country which is not cooperating, and this does not mean that Putin is on our side exactly. He may have his own selfish reasons for not doing what his lords and masters are telling him to.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's at least refusing them to makes him one of the few statesmen in the world I feel any respect for.
Yeah.
And everything that's been going on in the moment now, with these scandals to do with the price of oil crashing, the price of oil is plummeted to half its value, and this has put a lot of oil workers out of business. In Canada, there's 100,000 oilmen have been made redundant in Canada, and because of this crash of the oil. But the whole reason it's been done is to put pressure on Putin to try and strangle him. A war is being waged on Russia at the moment, and wars don't have to be shooting with guns. There's lots of ways of fighting a war against somebody. One of the things they're doing is they're trying to sabotage Russia's economy. Yeah. Because Russia is not doing as they're told, and they want to bring them in. They want to bring them into line. This whole business with Ukraine is a fraud. It's a lie. It's been organised by these people who want to attack Russia. The plane being shot down. Malaysian Airlines. I mean, Malaysian Airlines have had a lot of bad luck, haven't they? Lately?
Yeah, they have.
But Malaysian Airlines have been shot down. That was been blamed on Putin. The Russian rebels in Ukraine blamed on Putin. He has nothing to do with it. It's a lie.
Yeah.
They're trying to demonise the man. They're trying to vilify him in the eyes of the world. They're trying to forcing countries like Bulgaria to put trade embargoes on Russian gas. Why? Because they want to give Putin and Russia a hard time.
Yeah.
And luckily, I think Putin has what a lot of other statesmen in the world lack, and that's brains and balls. I think he will steer through. He'll steer his way through it.
He will.
He's got the force of willpower and the intelligence to get out of it, and I think he will. And I think this could be a turning point in world history. I hope
it is.
I really hope it can be.
Yeah.
You know.
Wow.
So, of course, I mean, the economy. I think the economy and finance is one of the most obvious manifestations of this conspiracy. I think it's the one that for me and for most people, it's the first thing you hit when you, in terms of the way this system attacks you. When you lose your job. Yeah. When you're forced to go onto slave labour schemes at the job centre, and then you get called names because you're unemployed. You're called lazy because you're unemployed. That's
it's ridiculous.
You know, your house loses its value and you get foreclosed on it.
Yeah. When I spent my years doing 9 to 5, I always claimed it was slave labour. I was a slave, and so are you. Yeah. Even the doctors in the hospitals. I used to work at Hammersmith Hospital, and I worked for several neurologists.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
What do you do there? Because I was a poor.
I was running the oh God, I've forgotten a clinic for I've forgotten what it's called now. Muscle testing and
physiotherapy.
No, not physiotherapy. No. It's a science. I've forgotten what it's called. I'll tell you what it's called another time.
I'm sure we could. Off camera, we could share many anecdotes.
Oh, definitely. Oh my God, goodness.
Yeah, I mean, everyone is in some way bonded to this system. Yeah. It's very difficult to break the bonding. I mean, I've done what I can by being self-employed.
Yeah.
I destroyed my documents of citizenship, my passport, my birth certificate, my national insurance number card, all gone up in smoke. I've divorced my statute law identity.
Wow.
But I can't. I still have to eat. I still have to drink. I have to drink water. I still have to pay for a place to live. Everyone is in some way connected, is in some way attached to this system, and it's designed that way. It's designed to make us dependent on it.
Yeah. In
all kinds of different ways, but most especially financially. The money and the way money is abused is one of the principal forms of control. And it's just sad because money is a pre-Illuminati invention. I mean, ancient societies had money. Money is a token. It's simply a token of economic value.
Yeah.
Which means that in pre-Illuminati, if we lived in a pre-Illuminati culture, and you were a pig farmer and I was a wheat farmer, and we wanted to barter, to swap one and the other, obviously I wouldn't make you wait till harvest before doing the exchange, so you can have your wheat. I'd take your pig and give you a token which represents 100 weight of wheat in exchange for the pig.
Sure.
And then when the harvest came, you could get that back by giving me the token and taking them.
Yeah.
See, so money is a perfectly healthy, natural, and progressive thing, and it
not when it's based on air.
Exactly, but it's a token of, it measures economic value. But what it's been turned into in the Illuminati world is especially through people like the black nobility, which goes back to the Knights Templar.
Right.
All right. It's which again ties into the Vatican. The Vatican. The first banks were Vatican banks, but it's been turned into a weapon of suppression. It's become turned into bars on the prison. It's been used as a form of control. Yeah. Because the richest people in the world have so much money. They have more money than they can possibly physically spend. It's not possible for them to spend that much money, but they keep on getting more and more of it because they know it's not about having money. It's about keeping us in line. Yes. This is why they keep bringing out more and more fiat currency, more and more fresh air loans, which they encourage us to get. They tell you to take out a personal loan. They don't lend you any of their capital. The amount of capital, the amount of economic capital in the world is minuscule compared to the amount of actual fresh air finance that's going on. So money itself has become almost it's a self-supporting kind of economic activity. For instance, I mean, my own personal loan, I refused to pay it back because for this very reason. I told the bank I wasn't going to pay it back because they haven't actually lent me anything. And so they sent me some very angry letters, and they sent me my letters to a debt collection agency. And I found out I kept getting letters from these various different debt collection agencies. The reason is because my debt has suddenly become. What happens is when a debt's not paid back, it's turned into a credit bond. Yes. And that credit bond can then be floated on the market. What's happening is these debt collection agencies, they're not collecting. They don't especially want to collect debt as such. What they'd rather do is simply sell the credit bond, my credit bond, on for a profit. Yeah. So, in a sense, debt has become almost like it's treated like economic capital, which it's absurd when you think about it. It's a nonsense. Yeah. But it goes on. It doesn't make any sense how you can treat somebody else's debt as an asset. Yeah. But there are people who earn a living. They earn a healthy living actually, buying and selling credit bonds on the stock market. Yeah. It's bizarre. Yeah.
Well, it's like our credit is a bank's asset.
Yeah. It is. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. It is weird.
There's very little actual capital. Yeah. In the world. I mean, it's in terms of gold. I mean, Gordon Brown, when he was Chancellor of the Exchequer in 2002, he sold off half of Britain's gold reserves at a discount price. Why? This is the big question, because to be Chancellor of the Exchequer and do that, you'd have to be out of your mind. This is an act of economic self-vandalism. It's literally throwing your own money away. And the only reason is because it was an attempt to deliberately bankrupt the country. For the reasons I've discussed, we discussed. So they can, the IMF can come in and clear up and maybe reorganise the world, maybe put China in charge instead of America or something like that. No, it's a real it's quite an eye opener when you discover this.
Yeah, definitely.
Can I bring up my discussion, what I'm going to talk about,
Go
the
on.
Bases conference?
Go on.
Yeah, because Kathy, we met at Bases at the Barge.
Yes.
You and your husband Jimmy, and
Yeah.
we met. It was Miles' last conference he did, which was excellent. I thought.
Yeah.
I think he did a brilliant job. I loved it.
Yeah.
There's a new conference coming up in a couple of weeks at Marlborough, at Bases at Merllin's Mound.
Okay.
And I don't know if you're going to be able to attend that, so I hope to see you there.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be speaking. I'm one of the speakers this time. I'm really,
Okay.
really pleased. It's a great honour.
Yeah.
I'm delighted because I love those conferences. But I'm going to be speaking about a subject which actually combines quite a lot of the other things I've been talking about.
Yeah.
And this is why it interests me, because it combines a lot of these other subjects that I've been talking about, and it sort of like focuses them on a single case. So it interests me for that reason. And also it's a terrible act of injustice that was done to somebody.
Yes.
And that's what I'm going to be talking about at my speech at Bases at the Barge. Not Bases at the Barge, at Bases at Merllin Mound on the 20th of June.
Okay.
That's next Saturday week, or next
Okay.
2 weeks this Saturday.
Okay.
So 20th of June, remember that. Please get there to go to basesproject.org to find out more
Yeah, I
details.
think Jimmy's gigging.
Oh, is he? Oh,
I think it's on that day.
oh, it's a,
I think so. Not sure.
but I mean, if you can get there, do get there. But,
Yeah, well, if I can.
and all you guys watching, do come along if you can. But,
Yeah.
the person I'm referring to is a lady called Helen Duncan, and she was a psychic medium from Perthshire in Scotland. And what was done to her came to a head 71 years ago, but it's still just as relevant now as it always has been, and it's very, very important in this case, because it applies very much to the world we live in our lives, and it combines the elements of the paranormal with the elements of government cover-up.
Yeah.
Now what happened was, and this isn't, I'm not going to give you all the details today, because at my event at Bases at the Merllin's Mound, I'm going to be introducing some exclusive new information. I've been in touch with one of Helen's relatives, and she's given me some exclusive new information,
Wow.
which you'll be hearing about for the first time at Bases at Merllin's Mound.
Okay.
Helen Duncan was a psychic medium. She was born in Perthshire, Scotland, and in 1897, and she practiced as a physical medium, which means she could actually manifest spirits in physical form. She would actually, at a seance, you'd hold these seances where everyone would come and sit down, and Helen would be behind a screen. And there are only about 6 people in the world who can do this today. And the curtains would part, and she would not only say, "Oh, I could hear there's someone called John. Does anyone know someone called John?" She wouldn't just do that, although I do take that kind of thing seriously. She would produce a substance from her body called ectoplasm, which would form into the shape of recognisable objects and people.
Wow.
So the sitters in the audience would actually see people they knew in ectoplasmic form. So it would be almost like you're creating a ghost.
Yeah.
And people would see individuals that they knew and they were familiar with, like their parents who just died or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so going to a physical mediumship seance is something I've never done. I'd love to go. But I know people who've been there and they say it's an extraordinary experience. To actually even be able to hold hands with your departed loved ones.
Wow.
So Helen Duncan was an extremely rare kind of medium. Now, in 1941, this was after the war began, there was a lot of calls. Her business was booming. She was doing national tours all the time. And she went to a place called the Master Temple in Portsmouth. And I've been there. I've actually been inside it. It's now a flat above a chemist shop. And it's a flat above a jeweller's shop now.
Yeah.
It used to be a room above a chemist shop. But oh, thank you very much, thank you. It's a bit warm today, isn't it?
It is.
It's lovely, it's beautiful outside. I've been in there, and it's, like I say, a flat. But it used to be like a spiritualist church, and Helen was a regular visitor there. Now, she was there one day, and she said she had a spirit guy called Albert, and he used to come forward, and he said he used to be kind of masters of ceremony for the seance. He was an old Australian guy. And he used to appear to the audience, and he said, "I'm sorry to have to tell you that a British battleship has just been sunk I have 900 of a crew, her officers and men, newly arrived in the spirit world. Of course the audience were all aghast. And it turns out that various crew members came forward, dressed in their uniforms, in ectoplasmic form, in their Navy square rig, and in their reefer jackets, from HMS Hood. Now, HMS Hood was an Admiral-class battle cruiser, the most powerful ship that the Royal Navy possessed. And it had been sunk by the guns of the battleship Tirpitz, and German battleship Tirpitz. Now, this in 1941, morale was low on the home front. We just had Dunkirk, and everyone was expecting Hitler to land at Dover any minute. The Blitz was going on. People were losing their bombs were falling on our heads. People were spending the night in bomb shelters. Everyone thought we were doomed. So morale was really low on the home front. So the government decided to keep the loss of HMS Hood secret. They didn't tell anyone. Even the relatives of those who died were not informed, because they didn't want word to get out that they'd suffered yet another defeat. So, so basically what happened was, there was a man in the audience, faithfully, on that day in 1941. He was called Brigadier Roy Firebrace. Now, he was head of Army Intelligence, but crucially, he was also very keen on the occult and spiritualism and paranormal investigation. So he, among all the people in that audience, would have known what was going on. Yeah. So he took it seriously what he was seeing. He went home. He went back to his office. He called on the secret phone, the secure line. He called the Admiralty and he said, "Look, have we just lost a ship?" And they said, "Yes, we've just lost the HMS Hood." He went, you can imagine what he thought. Yeah. And the implications are obvious. Helen Duncan was divulging wartime secrets through the testimony of the dead. And this represents an unpluggable leak. How can you possibly, I mean, how can you possibly keep something like this? It only needs one spy in the audience. It all firstly, people did know, it all got out, secret out, the hood got out. But what about what happened later on? I'll tell you what happened later on was, I think they kept an eye on her for the next few years. But in 1944 they decided to act. And there's a reason why, because 71 years ago, it was D-Day. 1944 was D-Day, wasn't it? Right. And that was a secret they couldn't afford to get out. They couldn't afford to let D-Day out. Okay. Because if Helen was giving out, if someone involved in the, because D-Day was a massive event, it was a massive amphibious landing of northern France by Allied forces. Yeah. It was being planned in secret. They even built a village in Dorset to accommodate, to cover up what they were doing. You can visit it today, it's a museum place. Yeah. To organise the training exercises secretly. And so thousands of people were involved. It would only take one of those people to die before D-Day, and one of those people to turn up at what Helen's seances. And in fact, there's evidence to suggest a large number of people did die during that exercise, during those exercises, on a particular event which I'm going to talk about at the basis of Merllin's Mound. I've got evidence for that now, which did specifically concern the people involved, the powers that be. So what happened was, they had to basically shut up Helen Duncan, so to stop these secrets getting out. So in January of 1944, they raided her at the Master Temple in Portsmouth, and Helen was arrested. Now, Helen had been arrested before several times, and she'd been charged under the Vagrancy Act and various other legislation that was designed to tackle mediums, because for the fraudulent medium. Helen wasn't a fraudulent medium, she was a real one. Yeah. But there was various pieces of legislation designed to keep mediums in their place, like the Vagrancy Act, which meant she could get fined a few shillings, maybe spend a couple of weeks inside. But when they arrested Helen in Portsmouth, they drove her up to a completely new level. They charged her under the 1735 Witchcraft Act, which had hardly been used for it was a 200-year-old act that had hardly been used in the last century. But if she was convicted, she could get 9 months in jail, which would mean she'd be inside and unable to practice her mediumship during D-Day. So they basically concocted a case against her.
But why couldn't they just have approached her and said, "Look, this is what's going on, we need you not to operate during this date and that date"?
This is the weird thing, because Helen was a patriotic woman. She was behind the war effort, like most people were in this country. They could have got to sign the official Secret Act. They could have paid her. They could have paid her more than she was earning from her spiritualism.
Yeah.
For the duration of that, just the few months until D-Day, and it would have cost them less than a damn trial that put her in jail. As one biographer of Helen said, a very large sledgehammer was used to crack a very small nut.
Yeah.
You see, because Helen's case wasn't tried. It was actually taken to the Central Criminal Court of London, where she was tried along with traitors and serial killers and lords and people like that in the Old Bailey. And the Recorder of London was presided over it. And I mean, Winston Churchill didn't know about this, because I mean Churchill actually wrote to the Home Secretary, and he said he found out about it when he read the newspapers what was going on, and he said, "What? Please let me tell me at your convenience why this obsolete tomfoolery is being used and wasting our court's time and the expense of the nation in this time of crisis." Because Churchill didn't know about it. Because Churchill was sympathetic to spiritualism. He was a believer in it. So he didn't know about it. So this is organised above his head. But as I said, Helen was taken to the Central Criminal Court to face this witchcraft trial, it was called. And 71 years ago, she was put on the stand, and this case was concocted against her that she was faking spiritualism in the Master Temple. Now, what's interesting about the people is that the prosecutor was a guy called John Cyril Moore, KC, who was one of the country's top barristers, but he was also head of Section B19 of MI5. So when he wasn't being a barrister, he was actually a intelligence agent. He was actually head of B19, human intelligence, which means Section B19 is the kind of organisation, the outfit, that the government would use to keep an eye on people, tracking the sources of rumours, things like that. So it's the kind of unit that would be sent in to keep an eye on Helen Duncan. And he was assisted by, the Recorder of London, Sir Gerald Dodson, was, he was a former Royal Navy officer. He was in charge of charities to do with the Royal Navy, so he was sympathetic to the Royal Navy. And they were assisted by, there was a third man who was the chief prosecution witness, was called, what's his name? Oh, it'll come to me. But anyway, he was a special constable. Oh, Lieutenant Stanley Worth, right? He was head of Naval Provost's Intelligence Division. So he was working, he was an intelligence officer himself. He lied under oath in court when Helen's lawyer asked him, are you connected to the intelligence services? He said, no, I'm not. And he lied, he committed perjury. He should have been prosecuted for perjury for that. But he was head of the Naval Provost. He was also a special constable in the police, and he was best friends with Chief Constable Arthur West, who gave Helen Duncan, he was the Chief Constable of Portsmouth Police, and he gave Helen Duncan a damning character reference, which made sure that the judge had to bring in the maximum sentence, 9 months in jail. He called her a pest on society, a ruthless exploiter of vulnerable, grief-stricken people. So the judge could send her down for the whole 9 months. And then he was the chief prosecution witnesses, and he knew the policeman who led the raid, and he was the one who lied and said that Helen Duncan was faking the ectoplasm. Now, they were assisted by a man called Commander Ian Fleming, and he's one of the country's most famous intelligence agents. He spied on the Moscow show trials in 1933, he spied on the Spanish Civil War in the late 1930s. He was head of British Naval Intelligence. Does the name Ian Fleming sound familiar to you?
Yeah.
He's also the author of the James Bond novels, which of course,
yeah.
That's the same Ian Fleming, yeah.
Oh.
And he was organising the entire prosecution case in time.
Oh.
And
strike him off.
I'm not going to watch I'm not going to watch a James Bond film again. I'm not having that. I do like the films actually, but yeah, obviously he was behind this as well. Now the accusation was that basically Stanley West had gone to the séance just on a whim. He was fun. He said, I'm going to the spooks. Him and his mates went along to it was kind of entertainment for them rather than going down the pub. And he said he'd seen Helen faking this ectoplasm using a big bed sheet to pretend so she was ghosts of ectoplasm. and he saw it his duty to bring her to justice for private reasons and purely personal reasons. Likely story, whatever that means. And so he organised a police raid, and the police burst in when to catch Helen Duncan using this bedsheet as fake ectoplasm.
Yeah.
Now, there's only one problem. That bedsheet could never be found. Now, just think about this for a minute. A bedsheet big enough to cover a 20-stone woman, because she was no ballerina, Helen Duncan.
Yeah.
To completely cover her, so you're talking about a king-size bedsheet here, in the chaos of a police raid, with torches going everywhere, the lights flicking on, officers rushing in, grabbing people. Why couldn't... Surely someone would have thought to grab the bedsheet. Surely that's a very important forensic exhibit, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, well, here's the bedsheet she was using. Here's the proof. We've got the evidence. Worth saying, oh well, we didn't, because he said he grabbed hold of it. And he says, oh, someone must have taken it off me and hidden it somewhere. And, what?
Yeah.
Hidden a king-size bedsheet. Oh good. Oh yeah. So that's a likely story. Now, the prosecution witnesses all said the same thing, and it turns out the prosecution witnesses in that case were all coached. They were coached by a man called Harry Price. Now, he was a paranormal investigator who became something of a debunker, and he worked alongside someone called Esson Moore, who was a female writer who hated Helen Duncan.
Okay, wasn't there somebody called Harry Price who was a healer?
I don't know if it's the same one.
Okay.
No, I think this is a guy from, because a few years ago, before Helen Duncan he studied Helen Duncan and concocted a fake story that she was fake.
Okay.
But basically, he was covering himself up for embarrassment because there was a legal problem between him and another psychical research organisation. But Harry Price coached the prosecution witnesses. Now, why would prosecution witnesses in this case need to be coached?
They shouldn't have been anyway.
This is an attempt to pervert the course of justice.
Sure.
Now, Helen's defence lawyer, Arthur Loseby, he wasn't a barrister, he was a spiritualist himself. He badly wanted to win the case for Helen, and his witnesses were not coached, and they all said that they testified that Helen was producing real ectoplasmic entities. And one woman saw her mother and recognised even the moles on her face. So this was real. Now, unfortunately, the mistake that Loseby made in defending Helen was that he wanted to get the case dismissed in one fell swoop in the so he waited for the next part of the trial. He didn't cross-examine Worth and the others tightly enough, because he thought he could get the case dismissed by getting Helen to hold a séance in the court. Now this is perfectly possible legally. There's nothing that forbids it in law, but he wanted to get Helen to demonstrate her psychic powers in the middle of the court. Now, the judge vetoed it at first, but Loseby appealed, and eventually he agreed to poll the jury. And now the jury elected not to see this. I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? I mean, who was on that jury who didn't want to see something like that, even for their own curiosity?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd have definitely voted yes if I'd been on that jury. I mean, it's crazy, absolutely crazy. And so, unfortunately, Helen never got the chance to perform in court and prove she could be a real psychic medium. And so, Loseby's defence case fell apart and Helen was convicted. And so the secrets remain today. They're still there. And so really, I think the reason it's an important case is the injustice done against Helen, but also the fact that governments at a high level do take paranormal phenomena seriously. And I think at a high level they know they exist. But I think there may be another reason why I think they rigged the jury poll in that court to stop Helen performing in court.
Yeah.
And that was because I think it would have essentially been an official performance of mediumship.
Yeah.
And it would have meant that no one could ever pretend that psychic mediums were not real.
Yeah.
And there's a much more longer strategic reason why the government wouldn't want that to happen. It's not just about putting Helen Duncan away. It's not just about keeping the secrets of D-Day safe. It's about making sure that we don't know certain things about the way this universe works. I think it's, for whatever reason, it's very important for the government that we, the people, believe we are living in an inanimate universe mechanism, of soulless mechanism. We have no soul. The universe has no soul. We're allowed religion, which we've already talked about. We know what a controlled form of anti-spirituality that is.
Yeah.
But we're not allowed to be aware of the spiritual nature of ourselves and the universe.
Mm.
We're basically told, you get born, you get a few years on the earth, you're the helpless plaything of random chance, and then you die, and that's it. Enjoy yourselves. That's what we're told.
Yeah. Or in Catholic Church, you're told, you know, about the life hereafter.
Yeah. Well, the thing about the Catholic, you're not even told, you're not even allowed to enjoy yourself in the Catholic Church.
You're not allowed to believe in ghosts.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're allowed. Oh, exactly. You can't talk to mediums. Well, because the thing about the religion, like Christianity, is that they admit that there is life after death. They admit that when you die, it's not the end.
Yeah.
But the Vatican, this big, and the priest, he holds the keys to the afterlife.
Yeah.
And you have to please him. You have to put money in the pot. You have to turn a blind eye if he abuses your kids.
Oh.
And then you get into heaven. If you don't, you go to the other place where you burn in for eternity. And the only alternative to that is becoming an atheist, where you become like Richard Dawkins. There is no God, there is no afterlife, there is no soul. We are just biology.
But even that logically is weird.
What if neither of those two are true?
Yeah.
What if there's a third option? And I believe there's a third option. And I've got a feeling it's the right one. You know how I know? It's because the materialistic atheists and the religious nutcases, who are portrayed as opposames, as David Icke calls them, they're engineered to conflict each other when they're in the same thought form. When it comes to the third option, they will unite. They will stand shoulder to shoulder and unite in condemnation of the people who believe in the third option, people like me. I will be criticised by religious nutcases every bit as much as I'm criticised by atheist hardheads. Because I believe, it's impossible to avoid cliches. We are spiritual beings having a human experience.
Yeah.
Life is just a dream. There's no such thing as death. We are the imagination of ourselves.
And we're the creators of this reality.
Yeah, we are God. We are part of God. We are part of the universe. And we're enormously spiritually powerful. And as David Icke rightly says, this is the biggest secret. This is bigger than the reptilians. It's bigger than the UFOs. It's bigger than Elvis being alive. I'm forgetting that. I'm just joking. But this is the biggest secret, all right? The spiritual reality is what's been kept from us the most. This is why the conquistadors wiped out the medicine men in Peru. This is why the Romans destroyed the Druids in Anglesey in North Wales 2,000 years ago. This is why whenever you come across the indigenous cultures, the globalist culture, they move in culturally, economically, psychologically, and they stifle that indigenous culture and they replace it with this off-the-shelf packaged modern monochrome templates that you see everywhere. It's to keep that knowledge from us and to stop us from thinking about it. And this is what David Icke got so right. He's not got everything right. I don't agree with Icke on everything. He's made some right blunders, I'll tell you, but this he got absolutely right. He really did.
Yeah. And
that, I think, is why, maybe one of the reasons why they put Helen Duncan away, and why she was harassed for the rest of her life. She died in 1956 at a seance in Nottingham, and she wasn't die there. She was attacked by the police, and she was very badly injured during a police raid. And she went home to Edinburgh to recover, but she died a couple of weeks later from her injuries. Yeah.
Oh.
And I've been warned off actually from investigating this. I've been told, people have told me to let it go.
Why?
Because I think it's still an alarming subject. When I went to Nottingham to visit a few people, I visited some people at the Spiritualist church there as part of my research. Some of them just told me to let it go. They said they didn't want to help me. I went to the place where Helen did her last seance, and the people in the house were very, very hostile. They were very unaccommodating indeed. There was no hope of me going and filming there, even though I was allowed to film at the Master Temple in Portsmouth. The people who live there now are very, very good. They let me film in the old Master Temple. But when I went to this place in Nottingham, there was they really want nothing to do with it. They're very, I think it's still alarming. Because I had to knock at a few doors. And apparently a lot of people who live on the street, they've heard of this. But they're very cagey about it. I think they're still quite scared. I don't know why. It's strange, isn't it, Kathy?
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
sad.
It's very sad for Helen. Really just wanted to earn a
Well,
living.
it's sad that they're fearful.
It's sad and it's curious and it's strange.
Yeah.
And I wonder why. I wonder why after all these years, it's still this. I mean, this happened in 1956. So we're going back, still going back a long way. Helen practiced like 12 years after the trial in her imprisonment. She carried on practicing. She got out of jail, but they were always harassing her, the authorities. And of course, this happened in 1956, and she died soon afterwards. She died. This happened in October 1956. She died in November 1956.
Okay.
And it's very, very strange that people have this kind of like. It hasn't been forgotten. Why hasn't it been forgotten? Just it's a pretty minor event. I mean, Helen never lived in Nottingham, but for some reason that one event has seems to have an impact on local culture.
Wow.
And there was a spiritualist church in West Bridgeford, Nottingham, where they have a Helen Duncan museum. Which is very nice. It has it's just a little corner in their main church hall.
Yeah.
It has like news clippings and photos. And
yeah.
It's very nice there, and they let me film there. I filmed there, and I spoke to a couple of people, and some of them were very helpful. Others, like I said, were not so.
Yeah.
So the currents of fear and aversion run deep whenever these conspiracies emerge.
Yeah.
They're long-lasting and they're pervasive, and maybe people are affected by them subconsciously. So maybe they don't realise why they are being
subversive themselves, really, I suppose. Oh.
They might not quite know exactly why it's happening.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a strange world we live in, isn't it?
It is. And we'll have to continue.
Yeah, are we going for another? Is that another hour in the can?
Eh?
Is that another hour in the can?
Minus 11 minutes.
Oh, that's long enough, isn't it? An hour, 15 minutes. But I'd love to come back. And
please do.
Of course, you're welcome to come on. You're welcome. You can do the same. I can interview you if you like.
Yeah.
If you feel like it, it's up to you.
Nothing to interview me about, really.
Oh, I'm sure you've got stories to tell, I'm sure. If you want to tell them, some people are private and don't want to.
No.
So,
They're not important enough that